Thanks, Ravi. Just a brief thing. I'm a gastroenterologist. So what happens after lunch? Blood flow gets diverted from the brain to the gut. So I hope to keep your attention. Okay, that's called the splanchnic flow. Just a brief thing. I'm a Tinagar boy, brought up in Venkatnarayan Road, right near the TT Devasthanam, opposite that on Venkatnarayan Road. Then I went to Holy Angels, Pondi Bazaar, then Dominic Savio, then Don Bosco, then I went to Loyola and then came to Stanley. It's interesting, I finished Stanley June 30th. I remember I was in Chickalpur, rural medical. Next day I'm in New York. I did my residency first year in New York, came to Boston in 73, and I was at Tufts New England Medical Center when I saw a building called Don Bosco. There was a school in Don Bosco. I don't know if Father Rector knows. There was a school in Don Bosco. It was right next to New England Medical Center in Boston. Then I've been the gastroenterologist. We were part of the Mass General Brigham. So my board today, I'm going to introduce one by one, is going to talk on AI, artificial intelligence. We call it AI in GI. Being in gastroenterology, we use artificial intelligence many ways. Scribing has become a big thing, We examine a patient in the examining room, and then by the time we come out, AI has already put all your labs in, all the x-rays in, all the physical exam. So it's good and bad, Is it going to replace human resources, down the road is the issue. But my first speaker today is going to be Ajit. Come along. Ajit Tarakan, Sujit's brother. So he is a Ramachandra Medical College graduate, Porur, then did his MCH in Vellore, thoracic surgery, trained at Mass General Brigham and at Children's Hospital in Boston, and he's the head of the director of the Oklahoma Heart Institute. So Ajit, you're going to speak on AI, surgery, and medical education.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's just very impressive to see something like this in all my years, to see all our DB boys together is pretty fantastic. I want to thank Sirs Prakash and Dharma for this conference and inviting me to be here. And before I go ahead and put those slides on. My topic is kind of vast. I'm trying to condense some of the advances in cardiothoracic surgery over. Prakash told me, I give you 5 minutes to talk about something. But I'll touch upon a few things which I think is relevant and is going to be, will be in the future of what we do. We heard American exceptionalism earlier today. We are pretty exceptional and also in other things like highest degrees of obesity. We take care of our patients very well, but many times it is after the fact they come ill with heart disease, and then we take care of them well. So there's a big focus on trying to prevent disease, which should be the primary goal of any healthcare system. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead. Probably the most important designation is I'm Sujit's brother. It's really proud to see all what he has done, not only here, not only this conference, but also across. My parents will be very proud. So I'll talk about three things, and all are relevant. One is heart failure is one of the most rising problems in the United States and across the world. While we take care of people well, they live longer, and the longer you live, the more heart disease you have, and the more heart disease leading to heart failure. If you look at the slide at the way left, we have 6.7 million patients with heart failure, adults with heart failure. And that number is only going to double in the next 25 years, in just the United States. So it's an exponentially increasing problem. And just to briefly tell you, you all have seen the pictures of the heart, but not to dwell on it too much. This chamber here, the left ventricle, carries most of the work out of all the chambers of the heart. So for reasons, most commonly blockages in the coronary arteries, about 60 to 70% of the heart dies and then it fails. So, and then there are other reasons too. So over time, this heart can't pump the blood to the whole body. So the classic treatment for advanced heart failure is cardiac transplantation. That's been tested, it's been proven. People have lived 20, 30, 40 years with organ transplantation, and it is still the gold standard. But there's only, like in the United States, there's only about 3,000, 4,000 heart transplants done every year. And that's treating a population need for this problem more than several 100,000 people. So in the last, although mechanical circulatory support, that you put a pump into a patient's body has been there for almost 70 years, the HeartMate 3, and the big advances in treatment of with mechanical devices for the heart happened in the last 2 decades. The last 5 years we've had, this is the most recent pump, it's a HeartMate 3 pump. It runs based on a magnetic levitating technology, just like how the bullet trains run. There's no friction because there's no contact. And the goal is to take, the left ventricle sits up here. The goal is to take blood out through a pump and pump it out into the aorta. While those are the pictures from the company of the device itself. It says dead battery. So this is a cartoon. So this is the device which sits in the left ventricle of the heart. There's an inflow cage that goes there, and when the pump pumps blood, it pumps blood into the aorta. So it's bypassing the work the left ventricle has to do. And every pump needs energy, so you have this cable that is connected out, comes out of the skin, usually the right side of the belly or left side of the belly, and it's and this patient can wear it on his holster and walk around. I'm a surgeon, I have to show you some blood, even though it's after lunch. So that's the pump itself. This is a cuff we put on the heart, and the pump is implanted into, and the outflow graft goes out into the aorta. So the role of AI can be used in a lot of things, but one which we focus on, we're doing some work on this, is how do you regulate how this pump works? This pump, what do we set on the pump? So this is a controller that the patient has with him all the time. So we set the device at 5,400 RPMs in this case. So the pump is running at that speed, and based on that, it assists flow of about 5 liters, 4.9 to 5 liters, and then based on the body metrics, if you're exercising, if you're playing golf, if you're sitting and watching TV, the resistance of the body provides to the pump is different. Now, but that is not something the machine recognizes. That's where AI is, there's a lot of work in play to see how AI can do that. Can you note what work the patient is doing, and then the machine itself adjusts the RPMs for the device. Otherwise, you have to set it. If the patient is going for exercise, if he feels lightheaded, he falls, that is running at a fixed RPM. So that's something that's a potential work, which is AI has a lot of role to play. So I'm going to switch gears from here. I don't have much time. We'll discuss more in the panel if this question comes up. This is one of my patients. He just got discharged after a long hospital. He did very well as a manager. He's alive for 5 years now. So to the point that now HeartMate 3s are they say it is as good as a cardiac transplant because the patient who should have been died, they say, who should have died in 6 months are alive 5 and 8 years now. So the next I've talked about briefly is the role of robotic surgery in general. And robotic surgery is just exponentially growing across the country and across the world. I do thoracic surgery, so lung cancer, esophageal cancer is something I take care of. Just briefly, what is the difference? This is open surgery. So if the patient has lung cancer, I open the chest and I take the lung cancer out. This is laparoscopic surgery, where a patient the surgeon stands right there. He has the instruments to make small incisions, but he works by the side of the device. And then the robotic surgery, where you have the instruments, which hand is operated by the robotic arms, but the surgeon is not standing by the bedside. He's sitting on a console further down. So this is my own team. This is a real patient. So we start the patient under anesthesia, just to give you a setup. We put the ports in to get get ready for surgery, and this is the device. This is the robot. There's one more generation that came after this, the D5, but this is the most commonly used robot in the country. It's called a robotic Da Vinci Xi system. It has 4 arms, and then what you're seeing behind is a console where the surgeon sits. So that's my assistant. So once the arms are, so the robot comes in, it's docked to those arms I've placed, and then there's the surgeon sitting at the console, and I have access to these devices in my arms, and with the things that control the arms of the robot, which is moving in the patient's body. Now, and that's a real lung, and that's the upper lobe of the lung we're trying to take out from a distance. So the surgeon is sitting in the room, but at a console further down. So this is the rise of robotic surgery. If you look at 2021 data, more than half the lung lobectomies done in the United States are done with a robot, and that number is only going up. I think Intuitive has just mastered the work of R&D. They have figured it out. So where does AI come to play here? Every move I make with the instrument in my arm, in the console, is a digitized. Anytime you have digital data that can be used in all forms of, I want to call it artificial intelligence, but it's some form of intelligence that I can go back and see and say, hey, this move is unnecessary. I go back and look at my surgery, but it easily cut 30, 40 minutes of the operative time. So that's a huge one. We use that all the time in teaching. Separate console sits, my resident sits on that table, and then I operate from here. So then, briefly about quality, and this is again huge. This Society of Thoracic Surgery is a society of thoracic surgeons in the United States that was formed in the early 80s and 90s. So one of the jobs they have done is to document all open heart surgery. So coronary bypass surgery is like the index operation. It's the most studied operation in the history of mankind. Everything about it we know. So about 99% of surgeons in the United States are enrolled in the Society of Thoracic Surgery database. And every case that is entered into the database has a 15-page multiple single-line data that has to be entered. And now it's over 30 years, it's 7.5 million patients strong, and we have improved the quality of patients because we have so much of information that comes out for each patient, each operation we do, saying that, hey, Ajit, this is your mortality rate, this is your, see this one. So you have absence of mortality is 97.6%. And that is now available publicly. You can, when you go to a surgeon, you can ask him, well, show me your data. And even if he may not have his own data, he should have his data for his hospital. Now, just think further down. Now, all of it is EMR and Epic and CS Cerner. We surgeons are entering our patient data in all the time. that has a huge role coming up in AI, because this data is what drives the whole AI engine. So I'll stop right here with maybe a little over 5 minutes, but we can talk more if you have any questions. Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Dr. Mushtaq Ali. If he could come up, he's a 73 Don Bosco boy. Also went to Stanley, my alma mater, 1980. He's not only an internist and a family practice doctor practicing in India, but he's a very keen sailor. He has been quite involved with the sailing club in Madras. So please come along and speak on AI perspective and how it may affect India, because people always worry about the unknown. Is it going to replace us? IBM Watson was a perfect example. They thought IBM Watson would come, you put diagnosis in, you put symptoms in, you'll get a diagnosis. But it really didn't pan out. But it'll be interesting to see how AI will be in 10 years. But Mushtaq is going to forecast what's AI going to do to India.
Thank you, Dr.
So, all of you know that healthcare consists of many parts. You have a primary care, you have specialized care, that's secondary and tertiary. What Dr. Ajit was talking about was tertiary level. Right? You have urgent care, you have emergency care, you have pharmaceutical care, you have rehabilitation, intermediate care, long-term care, service for informal carers, you have palliative care, mental health care, and dental care, right? So, if AI were supposed to be introduced into healthcare in the Indian context, an NASCOM.
Hold your mic closer, or I can put it this way. Which one you want? You can hold it closer.
So, a NASCOM study of 2023 states that if AI were to be widely used in healthcare in India, the GDP, India's GDP, would go up by 25 to 30 US billion dollars. I mean, USD billion dollars by 2025. We're talking about now, right? So, where is it that we are going to see the impact of AI? I'll just touch on a few bullet points like thing, because I don't want to bore you with details. I think most of us are very evolved and understanding of how things are moving, so you'll be able to figure it out. So, where AI is being used in India in healthcare is medical image enhancements, which help in diagnosing. So, I don't know, I think many of you will be familiar with a group of a chain of labs called Aarti scans. So, these guys all use AI as far as diagnosis is concerned. And any odd small chota mota EKG center, ECG center uses AI if it's going to read out your EKG printout. So, and the other thing is a lot of our patients don't have much information about their own diseases. Where AI can help would be like when you have chatbots, and this can help spread information on the disease to the patient, and what we're looking at is a potentially freeing up clinician time for other more productive activities. And disease diagnosis and prevention and prediction of medical outcomes. So, going into one of the things about, how shall I say, challenging things about medical treatment is about differential diagnosis, and that's where you try to sniff out the right one, and that's the challenge, and that's what excites us all. And I do not know whether if AI should come in and is going to dictate to us whether the charm of the noble profession will be lost, but it's a thing which we'll have to look forward for. So, as far as drug discovery and development is concerned, prediction of drug interactions, all these things are already there. If you go into any medical database and you say, let's say I'm taking rosuvastatin. My doctor has now prescribed paracetamol for my headache. Can I take that? So, because the paracetamol is not a prescription drug, you can always look it up and say, yeah, you can take it or not. So, those are things which help in this. And as for the final thing, which is about medical education, this helps doctors understand through simulation mechanisms. So, I remember when in 2020, when COVID hit the screens, at that time in Chennai, I was in Chennai, I was practicing, I was in family practice, so I was seeing patients every day, and we were getting a whole lot of conflicting reports about whether you need to wear masks, whether you don't need to wear masks. So, plus there was a whole lot of pressure about using certain pharmaceutical agents and not others. So, at that time, those of us who had access to a publication called the New England Journal of Medicine, they had a simulation thing where they would say it's a mild case, a moderate case, it's a serious case, severe case. So, what is the flow, the stream? So, those are the things I think AI can definitely help. So, as far as application of general AI in healthcare, the government is very keen on doing that, because there was a plan to start having AI into primary healthcare, where you speak to something or key in your complaints, and an AI bot tells you what you need to take. But then we all know that AI has got a problem. Sometimes it confabulates, it hallucinates, then you're stuck taking a wrong medicine, and making a wrong diagnosis is open for review, but making a wrong therapeutic intervention is open for all kinds of complications later. The final thing which I want to talk about is, as far as healthcare in India is concerned, there's a lot of diversity. First of all, the systems. You have allopathic system here, like how we follow. Then you have Ayurveda, then you have Unani, then you have homeopathy. And how are you going to coordinate all this? I mean, you at least have allopathy where you're generating data. And you have a whole lot of corporate hospitals. Everything is computerized and everything is available on the net. But when it comes to government hospitals, private small operators, everything is word of mouth. If a patient tells you something, you tell him something, and if you're interested in keeping that, you make a note of it in a book, the patient takes it back. That's how it is in the government hospitals at least. So, these kind of systems, how are we going to bridge that? So I do not know what role AI is going to play in Ayurveda, homeopathy and other things, but definitely there is a role for it to play in our system of medicine, the allopathic system of medicine. The first problem with AI becoming broad-based is 45% of Indians do not have access to the internet. So that's according to a 2023 study. So, and the economic disparities, also the technical accessibility are very different from city from urban to rural setting, and this is likely to create problems. Digitally, therefore, there is a divide between rural and urban India. So, again, in this category, you have a last category, which is the poorest of the poor of India. So, they are known as the BPL population, which is it's a huge tranche of people, 120 million people. Now, they have been included by a central government scheme called PMJ, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So, this thing is going to enroll you, and all your data is going to be in that, and each family is provided 5 lakh rupees equivalent of money to tide over your medical expenses. But again, how much this has translated into actual help to families, a 2019 study actually showed that the metric, if you use the out-of-pocket expenditure, there's not much of a difference between a person who goes and utilizes PMJ versus the person who's not covered under PMJ. So those are things which will have to be worked on. And the other disheartening part of the whole thing is 63% of healthcare spending in India is from out-of-pocket expenditure. And India ranks 15th worldwide on the measure and being 4th highest after Afghanistan, Myanmar and Bangladesh. So Indians are spending a whole lot of money out of their pockets for their healthcare. So obviously there's a lot going to be needing to be done, and I'm sure they're going to do it. Where the full impact of generative AI is going to be felt is, I think, in corporate hospitals, where you have one language, it's in English, and it follows all the terminology which we are familiar with. So the last topic which I want to talk about is India ready for AI? So yes, the government has been, right in 2018, the government has a body called Niti Aayog. These guys are tasked with the process of finding something. So they said, okay, here's something. We're going to introduce AI across so many sectors. What do you guys want to do? What are you guys going to do? So immediately, I think in September 2018 itself, they came up with a policy, National Strategy for Artificial Intelligence, NSAI. In 2021, they had a second paper towards responsible AI for all. This study focuses on establishing a foundation of broad ethical standards for design, development and implementation of AI in India. The paper also highlights the need for specific laws and regulations for AI. So as you can see, it's still developing and it's still in its formative years. So you're going to see a whole lot of things, but there's just no possibility of humans being replaced by AI. Thank you.
We'll take questions in the end. Mushtaq Ali reminds me of a famous cricket player of yesteryears. Mushtaq Ali, Vinu Mankar, Lal Amarnath, these are the great cricketers of past years. The next speaker, Fabian David. Fabian, come on. So he's had an interesting journey. He's a Ramachandra boy, but did physical therapy, and then went on to get his PhD from University of Illinois in looking at repetitive motion. So he has an interesting concept of using artificial intelligence in detecting Parkinson's disease by looking at eye movements.
Thank you.
So as you know, Parkinson's is a very difficult diagnosis to make. Sometimes there's no lumbar puncture or MR or PET scan you can do. It's the symptoms, the tremors that you get, the masked faces. So very difficult, like MS, ALS, Parkinson's. These are difficult diseases to diagnose and to see what happens. But this is an interesting concept, looking at eye movements to see how AI can detect Parkinson's disease. So he's one of our younger boys, 1994, Bacha, followed Chetan, another Bacha here. So he's going to talk on AI and Parkinson's disease.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't like holding stuff. Yeah. So, as Dr. Raj said, my name is Fabian. I'm from 94. Yeah, my name is Fabian, and I'm from 94 batch. I did my physical therapy at Ramachandra, master's at Chapel Hill, and then my PhD at University of Illinois, and now I'm a professor at Northwestern University. And I run a lab called the Cognitive Oculomotor Optimization Lab. So for those who are smart and awake, you would have figured out cognitive is C, oculomotor is O, optimization is O, and L is lab, so it's cool. So I'm considered very cool, okay? So, so now first what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to wake up. This is important because what I'm going to talk about is something that you would probably encounter, already encountered, or likely to encounter as you grow older, okay? So what I do is I'm a movement neuroscientist. I'm the one person on this panel who's not a clinician. So all I do is research, and I research movement in health and disease. And my interest is to understand how the brain controls movement, and when disease occurs, what goes wrong, and how can you intervene to improve movement. Now, while doing this, I realized, cognition and movement are kind of linked, and so I started studying cognitively complex movements. Now, I have a question for all of you. So which part of the body do you think you move the most? Eyes, exactly. You make 100,000 eye movements a day, okay? We understand the oculomotor system. Now, I'm not talking about visual acuity, I'm talking about moving your eyes. The oculomotor system is exquisitely mapped. We completely understand the different parts of the brain that are connected, that control eye movements. Now, because different parts are involved in the control of eye movements, right? Any given part of the brain, if it is degenerating, it's going to impair a specific aspect of eye movement. And so eye movements kind of provide a unique tool to see if there's some kind of impairment. And because of that, you can detect neurodegenerative diseases early. At least that's my premise, and that's what we're trying to work on. Now, let me start off. Nothing is done in isolation. I have a team. I have a neurologist, a neurosurgeon. We have physician's assistants. And then we have 2 gifted engineers from MIT who kind of built what I'm going to talk about in just a second. Okay, so now how many of you are aware of Parkinson's disease? Just show of hands. Now, do you know that, how many of you are aware of how long it takes for clinical symptoms to manifest from the time of neurodegeneration starting? You know, let's say it starts at time 0, neurodegeneration or something in the brain starts to go wrong, it starts at T0. How long does it take before you go to a doctor saying, "Doctor, I have a symptom, can you see what's wrong?" Pardon? 3 years. Does anybody else have 10 years? Good, 10 years? 12 years. It's actually anywhere between 10 to 20 years. 10 to 20 years. And so PD, or Parkinson's disease, is divided into 2 phases. There's a preclinical phase and a prodromal phase. So preclinical phase is when your neurodegeneration starts, but you have no symptoms. So there are people in this room where there might be active neurodegeneration that has started, but you're completely normal. Okay? So that's called a preclinical phase. And then you have something called a prodromal phase. A prodromal phase is when symptoms begin, but they don't meet the threshold or the criteria for diagnosis. So you're in a bad place. Doctors don't know what to do, they don't intervene, but in that 10 to 15 years, valuable time is lost. And that's what I'm interested in, is trying to figure out if we can identify Parkinson's disease early, and if we do identify it early, what interventions can we provide that could change the course of the disease. And Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disorder globally. It is the second most common neurodegenerative disorder, and most people will know someone or would have seen someone who's affected by the disease. It is a nasty, nasty disease. I see this in my patients all the time, and it takes away a lot from what you used to be and what you are, okay? So that's the point, is we want to detect PD early, and what I want to do is I want to use the visual system to detect PD early. So I have a lab, and we found out that eye movements of people with PD are very different from people with healthy. And like a neurologist will say, of course, they have PD. If you have Parkinson's disease, your presentation is going to be something that is different from someone who's typical. So what? So the question of so what was, so when does this change occur, and can I pick it up early? And that's where AI comes in, right? So if you have large amounts of eye movement data across a wide range of, people, right? People say from 45 all the way to 80 years of age, age, with and without the disease, AI will be able to detect when in that cross-sectional period does it transition, and then AI will be able to say, oh, you know, this group belongs to a healthy group, this group belongs to some kind of a gray area, and now you need to go see a neurologist, monitor what's going on. And that's the whole point. Now, there's an issue with this. The issue with this is that how are you going to get eye movements, right? You got to come to a lab, you have to sit in front of a fancy infrared camera, you have to have specialized equipment, specialized trained people. And so we want to like kind of take that out of the picture and use consumer grade electronics. So consumer grade electronics is basically smartphones, iPads, and whatnot. So what we have done is, in collaboration with MIT, is we have a software app that has 5 different eye movement tasks. And each of these tasks kind of tap a different circuit and a different part of the brain. And what we do is we take, using the selfie camera, we take videos of you performing the task. And from that, another AI algorithm can extract your eye movement features. When I say eye movement features, how fast you move, how big your movements are, how quickly you react, because all of this is indicative of the integrity of your neurological controlling system, right? And so that's basically what we've come up with, is we have an iPad, you look into it, and in about 15-20 minutes it gives us data, it sends it to a server, the server analyzes the data, it spits out information. Now this is an idealized state, right? I'm still validating it, because a lot of the time people talk about AI, but people don't know what goes in. I mean, they know what goes in, they have no idea what's being processed, and they have an output. It's like a black box. So my point right now is I'm looking at using an iPad, collecting data, and then I kind of compare it with the state of the art, what I consider the ground truth, and then ask the question, is it comparable? Once I've determined, yes, it's valid data that I'm getting, then the plan is to deploy it out there and gather large amounts of data. And the idea of gathering large amounts of data, that's the only way AI will work. The more data you have, the more you'll be able to classify, and the more accurate your classification is, because all of this has to be trained before you deploy it out there in the ether. That's pretty much what I have. Okay, any questions?
We're going to have in the end session, we're going to have questions in there, okay, if you don't mind. No, anybody who wants to see Dr. David, we're going to have a Parkinson's clinic in the corner of the auditorium. He'll bring his iPad. But he has his iPad, he brought it with me. I'm okay, he's going to check mine. But it's a very interesting concept, because by the time you get Parkinson's, the tremors, the pill rolling movements, the masked faces, the lack of movement, some of my patients go backwards. It's called dysdiadokinesia. They can't stop. There's no propulsion, they go retropulsion. It's a tough disease. It's slow, lingering punishment for 15, 20 years. So this will be a big breakthrough where once you can diagnose before the dopamine stores get depleted. So the next we have the youngest Don Bosco boy here, Chetan Prakash, come along. And he was briefly another Ramchandra boy, right? Ramchandra boy, and he did rheumatology, and so briefly, and then practiced as a rheumatologist, but then went on to do epidemiology. And as you know, with all the coronavirus outbreaks, people look at wastewaters. In fact, that's how they know when a plane flies in, when British Airways flies into Boston, they check the wastewater to see where the COVID was coming from Italy and elsewhere. So it's a very interesting concept, not the nicest concept to think about, but he's an epidemiologist, and he's going to talk about AI and epidemiology.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here on this panel with such illustrious other members. And I'm definitely a baby compared to others on the stage here today. So my work is not explicitly in the realm of artificial intelligence. I work with a team of scientists who are trying to figure out how do we detect spreading how do we detect spreading viruses or bacteria before people come to the doctor saying, hey doctor, I'm feeling sick? So my team, well, I say my team, the team I'm working with, look at wastewater data in the form of the DNA of viruses or bacteria that are passed into the wastewater through your feces. And this came around as a very powerful tool during the COVID, when governments were trying to figure out how do we catch the people who are not turning up to the doctors, who are not getting tested, before they themselves start to spread to other people, because you could start to shed the COVID virus in your feces quite early on after infection, maybe within 24 to 48 hours, but you wouldn't know that you were sick with COVID and you could be transmitting it to other people. So the wastewater testing started in different countries at different points of time in around late 2020, 2021, and it became a powerful tool because when you could see the transition happening when you saw a spike up in viral particles in the sewage water, and then you start to see more people turning up in the hospital and occupying beds. So this falls in the realm of explicit epidemic modeling, where you would use the data from these sources like wastewater or even Google searches, for example, to give a projection of when you are going to see a spike up in patients. Now, more people are trying to apply artificial intelligence techniques to these data because human beings are very leaky in terms of data. We give out our data in the form of tweets, we give out our data in the form of the number of people showing up to the hospital at any given date. We give out our data in the form of the things that we pass along literally in our wastewater. So, as Sir was saying earlier, you have two types of artificial intelligence models. One which is called a black box, where you just put in data, you don't know what it's doing on the inside, and then it's giving you an answer. And then you have more explicit intelligence models, where you are controlling what aspects of your data it's looking at, what aspects it is analyzing, and then it's telling you what aspects of your data are determining the answer is giving to you. And in epidemiology, when we're trying to understand the determinants of disease and the determinants of the healthcare disparities, you need to incorporate those checks in your artificial intelligence model to understand if you are inadvertently creating a healthcare disparity. So, yeah. The other aspect of having an explicit model for your data is that it's also useful when you want to roll out some kind of intervention. Like, for example, during the COVID vaccine rollout, I don't know if anybody over here knows this, but the Indian government was relying on models to determine when and where and how much of the vaccine to roll out throughout India, and that's how the different phases of vaccination were determined. So, yeah, there are some pretty interesting things happening in this realm now, especially after the scare of COVID. And you might really be surprised as to how interdisciplinary the field has become, at least in the United States. But I feel in India maybe it needs a little more of a push because after the COVID pandemic, the National Center for Disease Control in India did increase its efforts for capacity building in the form of people and infrastructure, but they have only increased the capacity building for the typical epidemiologists who would go over there, get a field training, and be able to collect data and disseminate information among people. But what we actually need is people who can look at the existing problem and try to find sources of data that can help us actually anticipate the problems that can come up. Like for example, in one team in Spain, if I remember correctly, they determined that they could use satellite imaging data of hospital parking lots to estimate when they would need to increase hospital carrying capacities and when they could anticipate a ongoing epidemic without people explicitly coming and reporting that, oh, I'm sick. And so it's currently a highly interdisciplinary field. It needs more people in it. Thank you.
Before I open up for questions, just a quick thing. The concern always is what's the downside in anything in life, like cryptocurrency. What's the downside of crypto? Just a quick thing. It's a synergistic thing. I just want to tell you, last week, the 2 Nobel Prize winners for science in medicine were from Mass General and from UMass Medical School, Worcester. They used microRNA, and it's going to impact all of you. We are now able to detect cancer 2 years before you get it, just like the Parkinson's. It's called ctDNA. It just got approved. It's a blood test. It's telling us 1 to 2 years before you get apoptosis, whether you're at risk for high risk for cancer. Sensitivity very high, and it's a blood test. You don't have to do PET scan imaging. See, the Cologuard, as you know, for colon cancer is a stool test. So many people are queasy about doing a stool test, sending it to Madison, Wisconsin, to Exact Sciences. And now a blood test has come, just approved last month in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is our Bible, that ctDNA is going to be a routine test that's going to be approved by Medicare for whether it's prostate. It's mostly adenocarcinoma, esophagus, stomach, pancreas, colon. It's not good for, say, thyroid or uterine cancer. So this is a big breakthrough for us. And the reason this happened was Rifkin and Ambrose, who got the Nobel Prize in their speech, said, what took years to untangle the protein mismatch? That's what happens in cancer, this mismatch of proteins. When the DNA mismatch is there, it keeps on multiplying. It's like a car without a brake. There's only acceleration. It can't stop. That's what cancer is. So they're able to measure this 12 months to 24 months before one gets cancer. This is high sensitivity, 85% sensitive. But it's mostly for adenocarcinoma, which is breast, esophagus, stomach, pancreas, and colon. So I just want to conclude on that, and then I want to open up for discussion with the panel members. I know there was a question over here. Go ahead, please.
I just wanted the microphone. Was the second Parkinson's was the second most Alzheimer's one. And secondly, is this?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll start again. First question was, in your discussion, you said it was the second most dangerous cognitive, and you answered by saying the first one is Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it's not dangerous, the most prevalent.
The second question is, this, I don't know how to ask this more intelligently. Is this an advanced economy disease, or is it also common in?
That's a good question. I don't really. Let me be first very clear. I don't know the answer to it, but there's good scientists. I'll always guess. Okay, so I don't think it's localized to Western economies, because right now I know the incidence of Parkinson's disease is increasing in India. It is significantly increasing, And I think it is a combination of environmental factors, genetic predisposition, as well as, environmental factors, genetic predisposition, and could be associated with diet and stress levels too.
So my last question was, is it race specific? Are there particular races? which
No.
are not?
You like one of the first slides we have when I'm talking about Parkinson's disease to people is that since we are a Catholic school, John Paul II, do you guys remember Pope? He had Parkinson's disease. Muhammad Ali had Parkinson's disease. So one had the year of God, right? And Janet Reno here, she had Parkinson's disease. And then Michael J. Fox had Parkinson's disease. And right now, I think 3 weeks ago, Brett Favre was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So it is across the board. Generally speaking, neurodegenerative diseases are biased towards men. More men get it than women, but it is a, what do you say, it's like, it includes everybody. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Okay, one more, because I think time is a factor. Go ahead.
Just a quick one. How far along are you in terms of being able to map the eye movements with your discovery?
So right now, I am in the stage of validating it. And my preliminary data shows that I can differentiate between health and disease with about 97% accuracy. But preliminary data is very curated data. So I don't tend to trust it. When I go out there in the open and get lots more data, I'm guessing my, specificity and sensitivity will reduce. But I'm trying to get what's called prodromal Parkinson's disease. I want to make one point here. This is unrelated, and if you took nothing away from this. If you have a bed partner who tells you that you're kicking in your sleep, you're acting out your dreams, and if you have difficulty smelling, right? If these two are there, these two are the strongest predictors. People who have what's called rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder, which is kicking in your sleep, and people who have lack of smell, with 90% predictive power is that you will end up with Parkinson's disease somewhere down the line. It's very, very highly predictive. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more? Do you have room for one more? Or, any more questions for the? Oh, okay. The last question. Go ahead, please.
1 second.
I will give the mic.
Hello.
Are there any plans to use this retinal motion detection technique for Alzheimer, because it's a bigger population?
The answer is yes. Yeah. His specialty is Parkinson's, which is a different. It's a dopamine.
So the answer is yes, because eye movements in Alzheimer's is very different from eye movements in Parkinson's. And then there are other neurodegenerative disorders that also have different kinds. So it can be used for differential diagnosis too, in theory. But my expertise is in PD, in Parkinson's disease. I want to start with that, validate it in Parkinson's disease, and then move on and find collaborators to expand to Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's will be way more impactful because it's much, much more prevalent than Parkinson's disease.
Thank you. There are genetic studies called the APOE gene that they're looking at. Once again, blood tests, which is going to tell the future. So thank you very much. I think time is an issue.
Thanks, Professor. It was a fantastic group you put together.